Magistrate Judge Casey Rogers with us this morning. Morning, sir. How you doing today?
Doing well.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us. Do appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm glad to have the opportunity to do it.
You do have a good radio voice. I'm just now hearing it in the headphones, and it kind of resonates. If this whole judge thing don't work out, I think we can get you a gig, doing some buy the new Chevy today.
Hey, that's I'll take it.
But first off, how many years now have you been magistrate judge? Now you've been there quite
working
a few.
on 9 now.
Yeah, 9 years at least, and so obviously experience is something you've got here. And this is something I've been saying, just talking about the magistrate judge position. It's kind of a unique in the world of judges. It's a more unique position, and what I mean by that is you're kind of. Whereas judges in other courts, they handle cases. I mean, they got a lot of responsibility. But afterwards, you're not kind of like in making sure the office is done. It's just, you know what I mean? It's kind of the magistrate judge has got to, when he's done being a judge, oh, by the way, be an office administrator. You know what I mean? It's kind of
magistrates are different. The law allows anyone over 18 years old, high school diploma, to become a judge. Of course, we don't have any 18-year-old high school diploma judges.
No, yeah, but in theory you could.
Sure. They're actually looking at changing that. And when I was part of the board of magistrate judges for the state, we took a good hard look at it, and we're still looking at what we can do to change that, alleviate people's concerns about an 18-year-old high school kid becoming a magistrate.
Sure.
I believe to be a senator, you got to be 25 years old. So
sure.
We were actually talking about at least making it,
and it makes sense.
Give that room that way, and then people feel better about it too. They're not concerned about the age thing, because I've heard that in all my life in New Mexico, and I've never met one. So most of us are probably in our 30s to 40s when we start the job.
Mm-hmm.
I mentored one of the younger magistrates, 30 years old. Great guy, really smart, does a great job. My mentors were a guy that was an old cowboy and a woman that was a housewife, grew up on a ranch. They're two of the smartest, sharpest people I've ever met.
Sure. And
well respected in the magistrate community, not even just the magistrate, but in the judicial community for their knowledge and understanding of things.
Sure.
So we were talking before we got on about having people with a different type of experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of good sometimes to have somebody with a different type of experience.
Sure.
My background, for those that don't know, I joined the state police. I grew up in Dallas. I came to New Mexico, worked in the middle of nowhere, worked in Columbus, New Mexico. So if you've never been there, you go to Deming and head south.
You blink, you miss it kind of thing.
It's not much there. I went from 5 million people to 350 people. But I ended up joining the state police at 19 years old.
Okay.
So being that young, actually one of the youngest the state police ever had, which I jokingly tell people is probably why the law says you got to be 21 now.
You're the example.
Sometimes you can be too young for a job where they give you a badge and a gun and they stick you in the middle of nowhere. So I went to Lordsburg, is where I was stationed, and there were two of us, and we handled 285 miles of road in 7 little communities, and we were virtually the only law enforcement out there shy of a couple of deputies.
Gotcha.
And doing that job, you learn first to be responsible for yourself, because you don't have any help.
It's true. You're kind of on an island out there.
You've got to be able to do your job without asking permission, without seeing, gee, is this the right thing for me to do? You've got to be able to just make that decision. From there, I went into narcotics, and I worked undercover for a long, long time. Most everybody who goes into narcotics works for 4 to 6 years, if they make it that long and they're out. Well, I was in narcotics for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
So buying drugs for a living. I told somebody the other day that I was the state police's experts on murder for hire because I'd been hired to kill people, which always sounds funny coming from a judge.
Once you get the perspective on it.
Sure. But learned a lot doing that. Ran criminal investigations, did primarily homicide-type investigations. actually was in charge of the investigation over in Truth or Consequences on a guy named David Parker Ray.
Okay.
Who David, by all rights, was a tremendous serial killer.
Yeah, I moved here later, but I've heard stories of his antics. Even to this day, I've started.
Yeah, he was something.
Yeah.
But doing that when I retired, it was time for me to go. You reach a point where you realize, look, we work this job and do these things with the understanding at some point it comes to an end. And excuse me, I left. My father was a exec with IBM for a long time.
Okay.
A very learned gentleman, a couple of masters in business, international business background, or a bachelor's in theology and
Oh, wow.
many things. So he and I discussed what I could do with the knowledge that I'd had, because I'd had a gun in my hand since I was 19 years old. That was pretty much all I
Serve and
understood.
protect was your resume.
Right. I interviewed for a job at 16 to work in a grocery store. I interviewed for the state police, and then I interviewed for magistrate judge. Those are the 3 job interviews that I've done in my entire life.
Wow. How was that grocery store experience for the other two?
You learn a lot about people
you do. Absolutely.
working in a grocery store.
Kids, I always say young people, those jobs you have when you're 16 or whatever doing, you learn a lot in those things.
Oh, and I love the job. I love people, so I love the job. I really did enjoy it. But the transition for me was leaving the state police. What am I going to do with the knowledge that I have? And we were raised in our family to be public servants. We have military background, school teachers, police officers. It's funny, I was the first police officer, but there had been a bunch after that.
Yeah, I would say you kind of started the trend there, I think, a little bit.
Well, and when you grow up in a military type environment, a military type background, law enforcement, pseudo-military, so we fit into that.
Absolutely.
Our mindset fits into that.
Yeah, sure. The lifestyle is very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
We have rules to follow. Most of us are very good at following rules, and we're very good at making decisions. And
attention to detail, all those nice things.
That's how I ended up doing all of that. But through a conversation with my father, I developed a company called Aspen, and I started teaching and developing alternative sentencing programs.
Okay.
Aspen is Alternative Sentencing Programs and Educational Networks of New Mexico. So we have a little bitty company that was teaching criminals that they don't have to be.
Gotcha.
And it's interesting when you are in a jail with 20 men or 20 women that are incarcerated. Most of them have a history of incarceration, and you can see the little light bulb go on, and they go, oh, so I don't really have to do this. No, you don't have to.
Sure.
You've got yourself in a position that only you can get out of, and helping them, giving them tools to do it, but not in a therapeutic manner, but an educational manner.
Sure.
This is what the law says. So you wonder, how do I keep getting caught? Well, you break the law 15 times a day, 365 days a year.
The odds are in your favor.
You're going to get caught at some point.
Yeah.
So don't be mad about it. Figure out what you need to do to stop drawing negative attention from law enforcement.
Sure.
Because police officers don't drive down the road and go, I'm looking for Mike. Where's Mike? I think I'll stop Mike. No, they're driving down the road, and Mike runs a red light in front of them, and Mike gets stopped.
Exactly.
You
drew the attention in the first place.
Right.
To
And
do
most
that.
people don't realize that until it's explained to them, and they go, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, and back in those days, Susanna Martinez was the district attorney in Las Cruces, and I had known her. I'd run narcotics in Las Cruces.
Okay. So you got a working relationship with her.
So
yeah.
I knew of her. We knew each other. She was very heavily involved in the high-intensity drug trafficking areas, which all state police narcotics guys were a big part of that. And I approached her with the Aspen program, and she was very interested in utilizing it. It's only taught by retired state police officers. We've had other agencies, people from other agencies, but if you don't have a background in narcotics or criminal investigations, you're not really going to be able to teach it. One of the questions I would ask guys is, do you know how to manufacture methamphetamine? And they'd say, well, no, I wrote tickets for a living. Okay, well, you can't teach my class.
Gotcha.
Because half the guys in class know how to manufacture methamphetamine.
Right. They're not gonna respect what you're teaching them because
you're not going to be able to
understand what the
sure,
concepts.
If you can't answer their questions and they know that you're telling the truth, that's a really big deal. They have to believe the words that come out of your mouth.
Sure.
So one of our rules in instructing was this: we never lie to them. We just tell them the truth. And most of us, if you've spent the life that I had, you don't have to lie. You can tell the truth. The truth is weird enough.
Sure.
You don't really have to make stuff
Well,
up.
and then they can relate to you as a human being.
Sure.
And I think in your line of work, whether it's law enforcement or as a judge, that's the difference between success and failure. Sometimes is that person may receive the information when they look at you as, instead of Judge Rogers, they look at you as just KC Rogers.
And I get people all the time go, "Hey, KC, sorry, Judge." It's okay, and it don't bother me a bit unless I'm in court. And it's like,
that's formal now,
Right. But I actually found that I learned more in teaching criminals than I ever learned in enforcing the law, because you develop a perspective that everybody breaks the law. Well, everybody does in some shape, form, or fashion, unless you're homebound. Even then, you may. But the negative thought as a law enforcement officer, where you go, everybody's bad, everybody's got the potential to be a murderer. Well, that's true, but it's not. It's not what we deal with. And I had over 40,000 people go through my program before I left it. And I don't own it anymore. I gave it away. I actually gave it to the guys that taught it.
Let them go and take it.
If you're dedicated enough to believe in what we were doing, then you get to keep it. So I gave it to him. The reason being that a judge can't sentence someone to a program that they have a financial interest in.
It looks like a conflict of interest.
It's absolutely a conflict of interest. So
even if you're not looking to make money, you're just trying to help people.
Sure.
But,
so we have to completely remove ourselves from it.
For the sake of the program, you're like, I got to step
away.
Sure.
And I knew it was the right thing to do.
Sure.
And like I say, I'd learned so much from seeing these people in a different light and recognizing that this 19-year-old gangbanger kid that got probation for possession of meth is sitting next to a surgeon from UNM who rammed an old lady's car because she wouldn't drive fast enough for him. So that really those lines start to not to blur, but they intermingle, and you realize that, look, we make way too many judgments about people in law enforcement, that those same judgments that help keep us alive, you can't make them about everyone all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and then when I became a judge, I realized that none of that matters anymore. You have to be able to walk into the door with a clean slate. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get rid of it.
Sure.
It actually serves a good purpose, but it's not something that I don't rely on my past to decide guilt or innocence.
Sure.
Because only the information that's given to me at the time is what I utilize for guilt or innocence.
Well, and also too, though, where some of it, where obviously a law enforcement, a peace officer sitting on the side of the road, there's a lot more variables going on there as far as their priorities at that moment are safety and security, not so much who's right, who's wrong.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so by the time they get in front of you, that all dust is settled. So you can really focus on, okay, let's look at the charges at hand here. All right, now we take the circumstances. Did you overreact to warrant these charges, or did you not? And then there's also the other variable, the track sheet, the rap sheet that comes with this.
Well, but see, we don't even utilize that. We don't look at that at all.
Okay, that didn't even come into play. Okay,
each individual charge.
Gotcha.
Each individual, and each individual judge. When I mentor judges, I'd always tell them, it's your robe, your courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
You make a decision that you have to live with. I can't make it for you. I can't decide it for you.
That's your job.
It's not even proper for me to have input as to what you should do unless we're discussing a point of law.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is a confusion over what the law is and interpreting it right.
Sure.
Then you can have that conversation all day.
And that judge has the ability to either accept or ignore my input. But we don't have that. We most of the time, a conversation that I might have with another judge is about something that's already taken place.
Okay.
I had a case the other day, blah, blah, blah. oh, really? So how did you handle that? Well, I looked it up, and the rule said this, and so that's the kind of stuff that takes place.
Okay.
We don't discuss things before they happen. It's not ethical.
So do you look at like the accused history at sentencing? Is that when that comes into play?
We look at their history. First off, magistrate judges are the very beginning of the process.
Gotcha.
So a person gets arrested. They go to jail. The magistrate judge approves or denies the criminal information, approves or denies the complaint.
Okay.
Is there probable cause here? Is there not? Is there enough information in this to believe that it warrants this individual being arrested in the first place?
Okay.
So our next job is to decide whether they get a bond, whether they have to stay in jail. The laws have all changed now, so unless there are certain things inside their background, they have to be released.
Gotcha.
Have to.
Okay.
Very distressful sometimes to try to figure out, I don't trust this guy. I don't want this guy on the street. This guy is really dangerous, and he has no criminal history.
Sure.
There are other things to do, but
but by the law, there you have to protect that man's or woman's rights. That's exactly what they got to do.
And
here.
we're judges; we have to follow the law.
Mhm.
It doesn't. Our personal opinion doesn't come into play. We've got to follow the law.
And this is at that point where if the public's listening and they're not liking what they're hearing, this is why you need to talk to your legislatures and stuff. They are the ones who fix it. The judges just interpret it.
That's also why I don't have Facebook. Because I'm sure somebody out there is going to be unhappy with me.
It's probably ignorance is bliss sometimes when you stay out of those
I
things.
told a couple of attorneys yesterday, I said, I've never been in a business that was considered to be a make people happy business. Somebody's always going to be upset. But that's the first step of it for a magistrate.
Sure.
Do we give you a bond? Have you got a reason for us to not trust that you're going to show back up?
Gotcha.
And that's pretty much all it is. Then we have to break down whether you're a danger or not. So that's that criminal history part.
Okay.
We never look at it again until sentencing. So
Okay.
if it reaches the point that they're sentenced by us, then we look at it. Then
Gotcha.
we make another determination.
Well, how do you handle, and this is where the human element comes in, because obviously you've been doing this for 9 years. Like you said, you were an officer before this. You've got a long time of experience in this world. You see a lot of people. I mean,
Absolutely.
Obviously there's going to be people that come before you in the magistrate that you see time and time again. So I know your job is to ignore history, but you're a human being. You were in the room with the person, and you're like, all right, I'm seeing you time and time again. I mean, how does that? Because I know as a human being on my side, I'm like, what are you doing here again? You know what I mean?
This is the thing, though. I think where it comes to the way I look at it is the trust factor.
Sure.
The community has to trust me. The individual in front of me, more than anybody else, needs to be able to trust me.
Yeah.
He needs to know that he's going to be treated fairly. And it's interesting that I've had people that I have sent to prison before.
Yeah.
And now they're in front of me. And I had an instance where an attorney, a defense attorney, said, "Your Honor, I don't know that you can hear this case." And I said, "Okay, counselor, why not?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, this individual tried to kill you back in 1994.
Oh, you said
And
you
I
might
said,
be a little bit.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And she gave me some particulars, and I said, "Oh, absolutely right. I shouldn't hear this case." The defendant said, "It's okay." And I said, "No, it's not proper. It's
Sure.
not, whether it's okay or not doesn't change the fact that it doesn't look right."
Sure. It's going to
So-
set up an appeal regardless what happens in this court. It seems
And in
like.
the law, there is a thing for that judges deal with, and it's called the appearance of impropriety. So you can be 100% right, but if it looks wrong, you have to pay a ticket. You're running late. I'm walking into court. You say, "Judge, hey, how you doing? I got to make this $50 payment, but I got a doctor's." Sure, man, I'll take it for you. Can't do that.
Nah, it don't work that way.
Where it may be completely legitimate, it sure doesn't look legitimate.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't look right, if it doesn't smell right, you can't do it. And I find, because I've been here a long time, you come in and I say, for the purposes of full disclosure, is terminology we use. I've known this gentleman for several years. We don't go to dinner together, but our kids played ball together, and I've known him for this many years. So do you have any objection to me hearing this? And if they do, then I drop it.
Gotcha.
I had a person remind me several times that that person went to church with me. And the third time I went, stop, hold on a second, we'll recess. I walked out, I recused. My clerk walked back in and said, your case will be heard by another judge.
Gotcha.
I did not want, now where I didn't recognize this person, I don't know that we had ever spoken more than a good morning. But by the third time it was mentioned, I could tell in the reaction of the other party
They were feeling uncomfortable
they
with it.
didn't really know how this was going to go, and I got out of it. And that's our responsibility. That's one of those things as judges that people don't see, they don't recognize. You were talking about managing the office. We don't do that. We have a court manager.
Okay.
And our court manager manages everything. We manage the courtroom.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they have alleviated that responsibility of judges having to be managers so that they can focus on being a judge.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a real
It really
good thing.
is.
Yeah.
It keeps us from becoming involved in the internal dynamics of having 9 people being clerks. Somebody's having a bad day. That has no effect on what goes on in the courtroom.
Sure.
And it may be total chaos. 3 people didn't show up for work. Total chaos in here, and in the courtroom, you never know it.
It's kind of like the duck on the water scenario.
Absolutely. We just keep everything that needs to be in the courtroom stays in the courtroom. And we like it as judges because it allows us to focus on what our true responsibility is.
Sure.
Now, getting back to what magistrates are required to do, after an arraignment or a first appearance, the decision's made whether they go to jail, don't go to jail, and then in magistrate court, time frames kick in. Magistrates follow certain rules about from this point at arraignment, you have this many days to make this next hearing take place.
Okay.
If they're in jail, that time's shorter.
Gotcha.
See? So everything changes from there. If it's a felony case, then it goes to preliminary hearing. And a preliminary hearing is where you hear the facts through testimony, through evidence, and decide whether there is enough probable cause to send this case to the district court to go to trial.
Okay. So in essence, it's a way scaled down version of like a grand jury.
Sure. And, well, grand juries are interesting. We don't do many of them in the 5th Judicial District, but I've been a part of many of them. I've been, I always say I cut my teeth in federal court, so I recognize how those things work. We don't do them, so we have preliminary hearings. And it's basically a probable cause hearing again.
Okay.
For misdemeanors, we would have pre-trials, final pre-trials, and then trial. And we have jury trials, bench trials. Our juries are made up of 7 people. One alternate is that 7th person. When testimony and evidence is over, that 7th person is released, and 6 people determine the outcome, whether they're guilty or not. The fact finders make that determination. In a bench trial, it's just the judge who hears the evidence and makes the determination. And it's really funny because I've been in jury trials where I went, boy, they didn't prove anything. And they go, guilty, okie dokie. And then I think, man, that guy, here's all this stuff that shows he did it. And they go, not guilty. Well, that's what juries are supposed to do. It takes that responsibility off the judge.
Sure.
That jury, those 6 people get together and make their determination. And it doesn't, as for me, I agree with them that they made that determination. At that point, it's not my job to decide guilt or innocence.
Gotcha.
So a lot of that decision-making process stuff, I think people get lost in it when as far as civilians are concerned, because they don't recognize that we train our mind to hear nothing but the evidence.
Sure.
And it sounds funny, but you do that. You're not paying any attention to the fact that this guy's having a hissy fit.
Right.
I don't care if it causes a disturbance. He's going to care because he's going to go to jail for
now
that.
They got a lot of TV shows that enhance that kind of stuff. But
True.
Go on A&E. They got like Court Cam. I mean, there's all kinds of those shows that just show those kind of outbursts and everything. But at the end of the day, that has no variable in what the judge is doing.
Well, we judge solely on what's given to us. We do civil cases. We're small claims court, so it's 10,000 or below, and we're landlord tenant. And it's very interesting to hear those cases because that could be 2 guys who were best friends forever and ever, and one of them says, hey, I'll fix your lawnmower, and he never fixes it, and the guy sues him over it. And now they're not friends anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you go in and say, have you gentlemen discussed this? Well, since he decided to sue me, we haven't talked. Well, would you like to talk it over a little bit before you let the total stranger decide what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And they go, well, yeah. And the next thing you know, they're back in the door going, oh, we worked it out.
Yeah, we're going to go get a cup of coffee.
So we love those. I mean,
Yeah.
that's because in a civil case, somebody's going to be unhappy.
And I imagine that's probably the more fun part of your job. And I don't mean fun is the right word, but the more satisfying part of that job.
We like it.
Yeah.
It's nice when everything works out. That thing about it, when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
It's nice when I don't have to be the bad guy
Sure.
all the time. And they get the opportunity to fix it themselves. They just didn't realize that they could.
Well, and I would also argue the feelings are going to be a lot less hurt when they figure it out themselves versus what you told them they
Absolutely.
think. That's going to create still, because somebody won and lost at the end of the day. If you make a decision, that's going to create that animosity still there. Whereas they worked it out, and in their head they can rationalize however they want it and be good to go.
Right. Like I say, we're not in the make people happy business. Somebody's going to be unhappy.
It's true.
It's just the way it is. So
I mean, I'm curious, how often do you get those moments we see, like all the time, where you get folks that come across your court and you actually reach them, where you're like, okay, this turns from not a punishment, but we're trying to get this person off this path here. I mean, how often does that happen where your job turns to we're really saving people more than we're trying to punish people?
The quick answer is not often enough.
Gotcha.
But it really is a cool deal when you realize that you fixed this. And again, I don't think that's the right language, that you have assisted them in fixing
Sure.
it. Because we can't fix. We're not there.
At the end of the day,
fix.
they're the ones that have to make that decision.
To do it.
Yeah.
I had a gentleman many times in jail that I refused to put in jail. And he asked me, well, I just want to go to jail. Can I go to jail? No. Let's see if you can live a normal life. And our practice is that we don't give people more time than they can deal with.
Sure.
If I'm going to make you go do community service, I'm not going to give you 600 hours. You're going to look at 600 hours, you're going to feel defeated, and you're going to get 2 of them done, and it's never going to happen. But if I give you 24, then you'll actually go out and do those 24.
It's an achievable goal in your head.
And we don't give them things they are not capable of accomplishing. This young man, by the time I was done with him, he was saying, well, I'll give it the best shot. And I said, well, just recognize it's going to be one or the other. You'll succeed or you'll fail. If you fail, I'm going to take your freedom away from you. I'll give you 364 days in the county jail, go home, eat a sandwich. You are going to lose everything that you've worked for since you've managed to stay out of trouble the last year and a half. Let's see if you can do it for another year. And 6 months into it, he had accomplished everything that we had, or that I had told him. And I almost use that term ask. Everything I'd asked of him. We don't ask. We're not asking you to do anything. It's an order. That ask is just trying to be polite.
Sure.
But it's all written down on
just
paper.
Common decency.
Says, yeah, you shall do this. It doesn't mean that you get a choice in the
We're going to ask you nicely, but if you say no, we're going to make sure you do it.
Well, your mom says, gee, would you go do the dishes? She's not asking you.
Right.
You need to get
that's
your
an order.
butt up and go do the dishes. That's, So anyway, about 6 months later, he comes to court and explains to me that he never accomplished anything in his life. And now he's done this, and it's just altered the way he sees things.
Sure.
He
probably has some
succeeded.
self-confidence, and he's got some self-esteem, and he's at the point, it's like, you know what? I am somebody, and I can do things.
There's a tremendous amount of failure that takes place in people's lives. I failed several things in my life. Failing should make us better, but it doesn't always work that way.
Sure.
And some people get in a rut of failure, and they don't ever have the ability to get out of it. I find that a lot with females that are incarcerated. They're 72% of all females, is what the statistics show. All females who are incarcerated have been physically, sexually, or mentally abused in their lifetime.
Wow.
72%.
Wow.
So it's not an anomaly. That this is more the fact than anything else. So in sentencing, I have to take that into consideration. Another judge doesn't have to, but for me to do it, I have to.
That's just how you feel you need to do it.
I have to look at this and say, is there another way that I can do this? So I get a reputation, and I don't make any bones about it. My reputation is that I'm mean, I'm gruff, I'm this, I'm that. I appreciate it, but I'm very point blank. I don't see a lot of reason to joke around in court. I grew up in federal court, so the processes in my mind are clear.
Sure. It's a time and place for things, and in the courtroom is a time and place for this, and that's what
my
we do.
courtrooms are quiet. We don't have a lot of conversation. There's not a lot of dead time because we're very fluid. We keep things moving. If I call a case and that person isn't ready, I call the next case. I don't say, okay, well, I'll sit here and twiddle my thumbs
Right.
until you get ready.
I got other things I can do while we're waiting.
Your case goes to the bottom, and we just keep moving. The citizens that I deal with that go, oh, gee, he's mean, they aren't taking into consideration the fact that I've given you 2 chances to do this. So this third one's done. And I have a tendency to write no more chances in my notes. And I show it to them. See, right here, it said no more chances. So guess what's going to happen if you mess this up? And then they come in and they've messed it up. And it's like, do we need to discuss this?
Yeah.
And it's funny, the people I've known for years that come in and say, no, I know what you mean. I didn't do what you told me to do. And that's all I had to do was just do what you said.
Sure.
And I didn't make it. So, yeah, I'll go to jail. I don't like people being in jail. I don't think that jail solves a whole lot. But at the same time, there's punishment that goes with this. There's consequences to your actions. If I decide not to enforce those things, then I may not change your perspective of what you've done at all.
Behavior.
I may be encouraging you to continue to not function properly as a citizen.
Absolutely.
So we have that all the time in judging. We have to decide what kind of punishment we're going to give. The guilt or innocence stuff is actually interesting because the law tells us what has to be proven. If you haven't proven it, you don't have it.
Absolutely.
And I let a gentleman go one time in a preliminary hearing on a murder case. And I had one thing left in my notes that had to be there, and it wasn't there. And I let the young man go. And I walked out, got on my phone, called my mentor, and said, well, I guess I'm a judge now. Because my personal opinion of this individual probably did some stuff he wasn't supposed to do.
Sure, yeah.
But legally, they didn't prove it. And I had no choice but to let this young man go. Not in my heart, not in my mind, and not within the law. I had to let the young man go.
Yeah, I know, and I'm sure, emotions kick you, but at the end of the day, that's the right thing to do, and that's the difference between being a judge and just being a lynch mob or anybody else, for that matter.
Sure, you have to eliminate that portion of yourself, because when I have a jury, one of the things we tell them is that you have to eliminate any prejudices that you have. It cannot come into play. Well, we all have different prejudices. We all have things, and we look at prejudice as being a racial thing or a gay or straight thing, that kind of. But there's all kinds of prejudice.
It's life experiences that generally form
all
those,
kinds of stuff that do that. But you have to drop all of that and focus solely on what the law says. And I do believe that it's really important that if you're standing in front of me, that you trust that I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, that I'm going to do the job. I had some citizens at a meeting that I advised them, look, I know that how you all see things, but recognize you're probably not going to be in front of me. How does that guy that's 19 years old, that spent half his life in juvenile detention, how's he going to feel standing in front of me? I appreciate the citizen that never gets in trouble, but the guy I got to worry about is that guy.
Because that's the people you're dealing with on a day in and day out.
And I
basis.
have to make sure he knows he's going to get a fair shake. And when I deal with people that I've incarcerated in the past, I have to make that decision. Can I forget this? Can I forget that I have locked this guy up 3 or 4 times in my life?
Sure.
And now he's still selling heroin. He's still out there.
As a person, you're just shaking your head, but as a judge, you're like, well, what does the law say? And that's how I got to do it.
And at that point, I have to say, look, I'm not going to be able to be fair in this. So I'm out. It's really interesting because all that responsibility falls on you, but it falls on you morally and ethically, your responsibility to the community, and all of that's written down that says these are the rules you must follow, and we have to follow them.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting thing.
Well, I appreciate you. We're running out of time
Sure.
here, but I love the insight. I love the last half hour or so we've been talking about just the insight of being a magistrate judge. I think I appreciate it. I'm sure listeners listening can, and I'm hoping what a lot of people, especially people that may be some of your frequent visitors to the court here listening in, and understand, okay, this is why a judge does it this way, and this is why it's that way, and maybe that little understanding. So maybe some people in court today hear you and be like, "All right, Judge, I heard you. I know what you're gonna tell me."
And I got to add one thing to all of that, Mike, is that we can't tell people that. I can come here and speak in generals, but if somebody a case is over with and somebody says, "Well, I want to know why you did that," well, legally, you don't have the right to ask me.
Gotcha.
And I'm not supposed to answer.
Sure.
So lots of people ask us questions that we're not allowed to even respond
Well, he
to.
may have just answered your question for you here, even if you asked it long ago. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
sir.
the visit here. And of course, if you guys have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to call the magistrate judge office there. Staff will be able to help, happy to help answer any
the
questions.
best clerks in the state.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'm sure you got a list of things waiting for you on your desk when you get there.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.